Good morning everyone. Good morning birth keepers. Good morning my earth keepers, birth keepers, wise women and healers. This is Courtney Piper Ayres coming to you live from Portland, Oregon. In just a few minutes I'm going to add Jadevyonna to our live feed, and we are going to discuss her personal experience of the Manna conference that just happened this last weekend. But first I wanted to just alert everybody and let them know that we're on the air, so I'm going to give a few minutes before I dive in. And you know, what can I say? The last few days have just been a shit show, you know, in the sense that we have we've endured a lot of pain and a lot of splintering of our community, a lot of defensiveness and offensiveness. And I woke up this morning really with a heavy heart. You know, I woke up this morning feeling this this real deep sadness and this real awareness that our community essentially has been divided down the middle, that we have been pitched against each other, that many of us are feeling this sense of being personally attacked on both sides of the equation. And fundamentally, these are not values that midwives and doulas personally represent. You know, midwives and doulas and birth keepers come into this work because we have deep, compassionate empathy for human beings. Birth keepers, midwives, and doulas come into this work to safeguard the physical, emotional, and spiritual health of human beings. We don't get into this work to be rich, famous, or to impose policies. We get into this work because we deeply care about the human condition. And that in and of itself is just where I want to begin. Like, let's dial it all the way back to the why, like why we're here and what we're doing. And to be judged as though there is something inherently wrong with the way that we are already carrying ourselves and treating ourselves is essentially one of the most false narratives out there at the moment. I want to address that. It's as though we're being treated like we're this angry mob of, you know, I'm not sure how to explain it, but it's like we're being treated as though something was inherently wrong or missing in our communities, and that we've needed to be corrected by outside influences to correct our behavior. And what I really want to shed light on is, like, although I want to, you know, I think that these messages of inclusion are really important to always keep in our hearts and minds. And I think that, you know, we need to have these discussions about inclusivity, and we need to have discussions about gender and identity and empathy and compassion and respectful discourse. Essentially what's happened in our community through the enforcement and the indoctrination of these ideologies is it's done the exact opposite. It hasn't brought us together. It hasn't brought us to the table compassionately with each other. It's splintered our community and created this divide. And you have to ask yourself, is this something that was just an unfortunate fallout of this, you know, well-intentioned agenda, or was it a premeditated agenda? You know, essentially I look at this like if you're going to win a war, right? If you're in the military or you're in a battle and you want to win a war, the easiest way to conquer your opposition is to divide them. So that doesn't sit so well with me right now. That's how I'm feeling. I feel deep sadness. I'm feeling like we are absolutely divided. I feel like we have been made weaker in our cause, in our mission, and in our voice. And I feel like we are just literally not being heard and represented, you know, by the board of Manna, by the folks that are involved in making these policy changes. And I stand corrected. Apparently, Indra is not part of the board. I'm not really totally sure what her position is. I know that she influences policy at MANA, and she's certainly had a hand in making all of these changes. And the changes that I'm referring to are the changes to remove the word woman and woman in all their literature. It was told to me that that the presenters at the MANA conference this past weekend avoided the use of this word, as though they're, had been told it's no longer acceptable to use the word woman at any time within their presentations and within their literature. This is of concern to me. This is of concern to a lot of us. Along with that, the day before the conference, there were hundreds of comments scrubbed from the MANA Facebook page of voices. Originally, these voices were simply stating some biological facts and norms and using language that's quite common amongst birth keepers. And what I stumbled upon and found was that a friend of mine had been essentially censored for using or discredited for using the phrase females give birth. And I thought, well, that's interesting. What the heck's going on there? So I pop over to the page, and sure enough, there's this huge controversy about whether or not saying females give birth is quote unquote hate speech. I'm not sure how we got from point A to point B, but somewhere in the middle, we lost sight of really what the intentions are in preserving our language and how important that is. I don't want to go around and around that rabbit hole just now, because I really want to get to Jadevyonna's story and her firsthand perspective of the MANA conference. But I do want to bring up why we're here. The censorship issue, the fact that people's comments were removed from the page, over 100 of them were removed from the page, as well as over 100 reviews, including my own, that were put on the MANA page that were eventually deleted and removed from the page. So there's the one issue, the censorship issue. The language issue is the other. Why are we being told that we can, essentially it's being enforced that we can't use certain words? And then the third issue is, why was Jadevyonna removed from the mic at the open forum at the MANA conference? These are the questions that I have for the MANA board of directors. I've contacted them directly. I haven't gotten a response. These are the questions that I have for Indra directly, and to my knowledge, up until this point, she hasn't addressed any of those issues directly. So we'll see what happens today, but let's just move forward. So let me see if I can get Jadevyonna on. She's at a birth this morning, ironically, which just sort of tickles me. And so she's going to do the best she can to pop on and attend this interview from her car while she basically labor sits. Well, she's not labor sitting, her preceptor is, so everybody's in good hands. But I just kind of find that a bit delightful, that she's right in the middle of doing the good work that birth keepers do, and still, wanting to participate this morning and be with us. So thank you, Jadevyonna, for that. I want to bring up one more issue. The fourth issue that is weighing heavily on my heart is how the elders in our community have subsequently started to feel abused. There has been more than a handful of comments that I've read recently that have been nothing short of short-sighted, hateful, and blatantly disrespectful towards our elder midwives. And that's something that I also want to bring up and express my deep empathy for the women and the midwives who have given their lives and is their lives' work to preserve the sanctity of birth, who risk their careers, who get up in the middle of the night to attend women in labor, who miss out on, many aspects of life to be to be the first responders, as it were, to be on the front lines of protecting mothers and babies. And it's just with a sad heart that I recognize how poorly they're being treated at the moment. And it's my sincerest hope that we can reestablish genuine concern and empathy for everyone involved, including and especially our elders. Okay, guys. I will take some questions. I'll do my best to respond to questions, but let's get on to Jadevyonna's story. If you don't know, Jadevyonna is a soon-to-be midwife. She's a student midwife working out of Southern California, and she attended the MANA conference this past weekend, and she wants to tell her story because she, in her own words, was physically removed from the open forum, and well, I'll let her tell the story. Let's see how this works. Here we go. Okay, allow your viewers to request to join you as a guest in your broadcast. Fantastic. So Jadevyonna, I think you need to request to be on with me, so hopefully you're watching right now. There should be a button down at the bottom of your screen where you can request to join, and there was no easy way to trial run this. Here we go. Fantastic. Thanks, Jade. Good morning, Jadevyonna. How are you? Oh, there you are. Abracadabra. I feel we win. That's it. I'm just excited that it worked.
I know. Once you said, like, I had to figure it out, I was like, oh, I don't know.
I was like, oops, it's on you. Never mind. I have no stake in this. No, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So ironically enough, you're sitting in the car waiting on a mama to give birth.
Yes. It is still very early. Not sure if we'll be headed home, you know, if the baby will decide to come today. But
right.
I figured, you know, this is important to me, so I'd like to take that.
Well, and you're right. It's this is important to you, but essentially what comes first is you attending, you know, this mom in labor. And it's just, I mean, honestly, it's so delightful to even kind of like be sitting with you. I love that energy. I love, you know, being a part of that. And like, and just, it's just representative of that's really our primary function, right? I mean, that's where our emphasis should be, you know, and should always be, is on the mother-baby unit and, you know, the safety and sanctity of birth. And so let's, you know, it's just beautiful that presence is alive and well, even in this interview. So bless her, bless you.
Yeah. So,
thanks for coming on.
My preceptor, you know, wave at me from the door, then I might have to run out, but
I think we would all understand that. So no worries.
Yeah. I think I'm going to be okay.
Great. And then I also know you've been working on a statement, basically, that you've written out your story and that you'll have that soon up so people can read it in written form.
Yes. The reason I decided to hold off on posting it was because I wanted to really gather all my thoughts. And I just recently, as you know, got an email from Vicki Headley, the president of MANA, wanting to talk with me. So I can't wait to post my story until I have that conversation with her and Sarita Bennett, because then I'll have the full story, because I'm really interested to see what their perspective is of what happened at the open forum. And so I'll definitely have my story out probably this weekend after I speak with those ladies about the incident. So that's
great. And I was really happy to hear that, because really what the whole idea here is to build to build bridges and not walls, right? That we want to sit at the table together, break bread, and really get deep and discuss these things in a respectful, calm, loving way, you know, to be empathetic to both sides and to come to an understanding. So let's just dive right in. We, we've talked previously and kind of gone over like the overall big picture of the MANA conference, and there's been a lot of there've been, I've gotten personally quite a few reports that the overall feeling of the conference seemed very tense.
Mm-hmm.
Some people use the word hostile. Folks have said things like there was this presence of authority,
Yeah.
that there were folks dressed, you know, and not to, you know, pick on someone's attire, but sort of like it brings to the atmosphere this idea that things are, you know, very buttoned up and legal, you know, and that there was this presence of kind of oversight and really like you know, an agenda essentially as to how things were going to be presented at the conference.
Yes.
So tell me from the beginning, like, first of all, give me a little background about yourself. I think folks are going to want to know, you know, how long you've been a midwife or how long you've been a student midwife, and just kind of a little bit about you.
Okay. I fell in love with midwifery after I had my first son. I got pregnant when I've been with my husband since I was 14 years old.
Wow.
So we got married when I was 19, and I had my first son when we were 19 as well. My mother-in-law happens to be a midwife, and she's the one who introduced me to this world. I had a beautiful water birth of my first son, and like I fell in love with that work. It took me a year to decide to do it because I was like, can I really be the one in charge? Can I really be the one, you know, taking care of these moms and babies? Like, you know, I'm totally fine with being an assistant, but, you know, when you're the midwife, you're the one who, you know, has to really care for those women and be the one to step up in emergency situations.
Right. It's an absolutely huge responsibility.
It is. It really.
Right. And my midwife always said to me, you're paying me to know what I know, but hopefully to never use what I know. She was a very hands-off midwife, you know, one of those that essentially sits in the corner and observes the birth.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we want our midwives to be extremely knowledgeable, empathetic and aware, and understand all of the aspects of birth and, you know, what is needed, and that takes a long time to build that knowledge base. It takes a long time as an apprentice to feel comfortable attending births in that capacity.
Exactly. Someone's asking what my age is now. I'm going to be 25. I'm going to be 25 in about a week. I've been a student midwife for 3.5 years now. I've attended over 60 births. I love what I do. I should be done in about 6 months. You know, I fell in love with this work because I saw how amazing birth is, how amazing it is to bring a baby earthside, like just the magic of it. And, you know, my first birth I attended, I was super, you know, high anxiety, like super excited, you know, and my preceptor's like telling me like, you just need to sit down and relax. You're going to exhaust yourself, you know?
Right.
And, but it's just an amazing feeling. Like I almost cry every time a baby's born because I get super emotional about it because it's such an intense connection that you have with these people. And, you know, it really is a passion. It really is a lifestyle, and I am 100% committed. And, you know, I really, really enjoy and love what I do. So.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that is, I mean, we all do as birth keepers in a sense. Like I make the joke, like we don't come into birth work to get rich and famous. It's truly a labor of love. I was, you know, my good friend, Jadevyonna, Tornado has been on 2 back-to-back births right now. She's going on like 48 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, we do this out of deep love and concern for humanity and for mothers and babies and the entire family unit. And it's certainly not a selfish,
we certainly don't come to this with this, you know, selfish agenda to serve ourselves. We are servants of, you know,
Yeah.
that's what, you know, I've been a doula for 9 years now, and that's what doula means. It means, you know, mother's servant.
Yeah.
I'm of service. And so we're inherently, you know, you know, putting the mother and baby unit first and foremost above our needs at all times. And so that really does kind of make us special, I think.
Yes, we are very special.
and yeah, aware of ourselves and what we bring to birth. So tell me, let's fast forward to some. Thank you for telling us more about your background, so folks know a little bit about you. And tell me about the MANA conference, in the sense, like, being a young midwife and upcoming midwife, and just now, you know, kind of finishing up your education. What was the reason that you wanted to go to the MANA conference?
So, you know, I really wanted to attend the MANA conference to really just connect with lots of other midwives, and magnify my skills as a midwife before I'm out on my own. You know, there was a lot of, you know, breakout sessions and plenaries that really interest me. I've never, you know, never looked at the MANA stats, never, you know, knew a lot about our statistics, and I really just wanted to get more involved and feel like part of the community, and really just, the main essential thing was really just to magnify my skills and knowledge so that I can take that with my work when I'm on my own.
Right. So there were many breakout rooms and forums, and I know from experience, like, you can't go to all of them, so you have to choose,
yeah,
you know, the ones that you feel are, you know, that you're most drawn to. What were some of the forums that you attended?
I attended the breech one with Dr. Stu. I attended one that had to do with healing provider trauma. That one was
healing provider trauma.
Provider trauma. It was basically
wow.
teaching, like, us how to, you know, work through our own trauma, even from our own childhood experiences or as birth workers, and then that way we can be like the stepping stones for our clients to work through theirs. It was really a very good class. And then I attended one that had to do with you know, postpartum depression and how to better manage that for our clients. So really, I wanted to attend things that I felt like I needed a little bit more knowledge on, that I do see happen with clients that I have been around. And but then I did decide to go, after I could sense all the tension of the conference, I did decide to attend the whiteness and racism class, and that's when things got a little uncomfortable, if you can say so.
Do you want to speak to that a little bit? It's you know, I think that you said, well, what you said was that you, after you felt like there was kind of to address it, you then chose to go to this class because you were feeling some tension in the conference. Can you speak to that? Like, what was the overall feeling at the conference?
Like, the best way is tension, and that is what I said at the mic when I first spoke, was like, I can sense all the tension. And you know, when I first got to the conference, you know, I did notice that the LGBT community were a big part of the conference, because, you know, our name tags had preferred pronouns on there. I chose to leave mine blank, you know, because that was my personal choice.
Can I ask you why you chose to leave yours blank?
Because I'm Jadevyonna Lewis, and I want you to call me by my name. I don't need to be referred to as she or he or they. I feel like that doesn't have anything to do with the reason I was there. Like, the reason I was there was as a student midwife to learn with other midwives, and I didn't feel like I needed to share my preferred pronoun and have it on display for everyone. And, there was stickers you can add onto your name tag to show that you support the LGBT community. And, it's a difficult thing to be, asked right first then and there to show whether you're going to support or whether you're not going to put a sticker on. Because, automatically, if you don't put a sticker on, people think that you're not supportive of those communities. And I totally am supportive of the LGBT community. But I don't need to sit there. I don't need to flaunt it on my personal name tag. I don't need to. It felt like everyone was trying to prove something, and I didn't need to prove that I supported them, because personally I know that I do. I have both people, I have people in my family who are part of that group who I love dearly, and I support them in their lives. But, I'm there as a midwife,
right.
midwife. I'm there as Jadevyonna Lewis, and it's just that simple. I don't need to, wear certain things to, accommodate others, if that makes sense.
Right. And I think that it's important to address this up front, in the sense that, I've been told two different things from folks that think that the, wearing the rainbow flags or the triangles or whatever was given was a way of showing your allyship or your support. And I've also been told that from folks in that community that basically we're not allowed to choose if we're an ally. That's for marginalized groups to decide whether or not we've proven ourselves as an ally. And essentially, none of it really kind of makes a whole lot of sense to me in this way. I think that our behavior and that our intentions speak louder than any virtue signaling. I've been as a new phrase that I just picked up, people have been calling this virtue signaling, and essentially what that means, it's a way to then classify folks and delineate folks from one another. So essentially, it's kind of this divisive tool that pitches people's, emotions or ideologies or suspected, non-support of groups front and center, and takes away from the actual behavior and companionship and respect and discourse that actually goes on within our community. Again, it puts us in this position where we're told that, we need that somehow we haven't all along been addressing and been respectful of each other, that we somehow need to prove or show that we're being respectful and inclusive of each other. So
yeah,
it's a little funky, and I think that it's good to talk about how, some folks are going to feel uncomfortable doing this virtue signaling, and others are going to feel, that they're more, safe by it if they can identify people that are allies. And I think that's just a great, deep conversation to be having in a forum. But let's keep moving on. So you discussed that the name tags, you were asked to give your preferred pronoun, and that you decided that really wasn't what you were there to that you felt more comfortable just addressing people face to face and being respectful. And then the emblems and things you chose not to put on your name tag as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so tell me a little bit about, well, what do you think is the most important thing that you want to talk about as far as what you took away from the conference?
What I took away from the conference is that I was unwelcome. That, essentially, because it's hard, so I'll just start with when I attended that whiteness and racism class.
Right.
In that class, the person teaching that class, decided to tell me a lot about what she believed to be true about myself and my race. And, they used, and this is a very harsh word, but they used the word white supremacist. And I'm sitting in this class being told that I'm a white supremacist because of the color of my skin, and that is my culture. And I'm just sitting there really like dumbfounded because I was like, whoa, like that's a broad statement to make. And, you know, I decided to do my own like follow up research after that class. And I looked up the definition of white supremacy, just on Google, just normal.
Yeah.
And it says the belief, I really emphasize the word belief, that white people are superior to those of all other races and should therefore dominate society. It's a belief. It's not, imprinted in me because of the color of my skin. And I 100% do not believe in white supremacy. I am not a white supremacist, and I was told multiple times during that class that I was, and that I have to work on some real core issues to address that I have all these privileges compared to other races. And, I need to remember that every single day and live my life every single day working through, they gave a whole list of things that, that they are, it's really, they're accusing white people of, saying that we must believe these things because we are white and we were raised in white supremacy. And that is a huge issue for me. That was a very, very, very disturbing class. And the only reason we attended that class was because we could sense all the tension between the races and, the LGBTQ community. And so I was like, let's go to this class. Let's go see what everyone's talking about, because I'm really, really interested now and curious as to what's going on. And, just sitting there listening to that kind of stuff. And I was like, whoa, like, I get it now. I get why there's so much tension here, because those are some very broad, harsh, comments to make to people. You're assuming that I believe in these things, and that is wrong.
Right. I think that that's where things get really uncomfortable, right? Yeah. It's not to say that, the birth community is a microcosm of the greater community, right? Like our world community.
Yeah.
So of course we're going to have aspects of our global community represented in our microcosm community of birth workers. So there's going to be issues amongst us around, I don't particularly love using these words myself, but race relations or disparities within our communities, or even some, folks that may have feelings of bigotry or may operate in that fashion. But just like the larger global community, those are really small percentage of people, in the sense that, folks that actually identify with being a white supremacist. And to be quite frank with you, unless you can prove otherwise, I don't find that birth workers in and of themselves are people that are full of hate, bigotry, and divisiveness, and feeling superior of anyone. Essentially, like we stated in the beginning, we come into this work because we're natural caregivers, we're nurturers, we're there to safeguard humanity, we're there to help mothers birth their children into the world into love and safety and bonding. I mean, one of my favorite midwives, one of my favorite midwives, elder midwives, is Carla Hartley. And I know I mentioned her to you when we were speaking. I said, you got to know who Carla is. But she and her, one of her besties, Jan Tritton, who's Gail Hart. They're all very, very important to me. But Gail, they both have oxytocin tattoos on their arms.
Oh.
And one of the reasons that they have oxytocin, molecule tattooed on their arms is because they love to bring up the discussion wherever they go. It's a great conversation starter about the importance of oxytocin being this bonding hormone. And it's just
great,
incredibly wonderful and radical and fantastic and loving. But that's who we are. We're here to assist in the bonding of humanity.
Exactly.
So, just based on that notion alone, I mean, I don't see a lot of us in the community coming to these forums with like vitriol, hate, bigotry, and all these other things. Not to say that we shouldn't be addressing you know, ways in which we can have respectful discourse, and that, of course, we need to be addressing disparities in maternal and fetal and health, and we need to be discussing how unequally represented and how there are problems in certain communities based on lack of funding and representation, and that there are worse outcomes in some communities than others, and this is an economic disparity. These are global issues that the birth community continuously tries to address.
Exactly.
And so it's like we essentially, what I'm saying is, like, we've always kept that close to our hearts, and I think that we've always wanted to address all of these things. So so you said that that things felt tense, and so you went to the class on race and white supremacy, and that felt even more uncomfortable for you because you felt like it was based on the presumption and stated clearly that everyone who I guess appears as Caucasian or white is in fact has feelings of superiority or identifies as being a white supremacist. Is that right? Like,
yes. No, like on her slides it said white supremacy. Like, this isn't just like coming out of my mouth. This was told to me, and I was very shocked that they used that word. Yeah, that was told to all of us in there, and it was very heartbreaking. Like, it was, walking out of that class, I like kind of looked around and I'm like, wow, like, is everyone really looking at me that way? Like, is this really what's going on here? Because it's very hurtful. It was very hurtful. I felt really, really hurt after that class, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, I think folks would say, in order to affect change, sometimes we have to get into these uncomfortable discussions, and to move the dial, that we have to sit with things that make us feel uncomfortable. Just like a mom in transition, right? Like, we have to, we have to go through the painful aspects of becoming something different. Exactly. And I don't disagree with that. I think that's essentially very important, to sit with uncomfortable topics and have, a respectful and positive discourse around these things. And I absolutely think they need to be addressed. I think what the issue here is, and the overall takeaway is, that I feel, in my senses and the reports that I'm getting, is that man needs to take some responsibility in how these issues, topics, and things were rolled out, how they use certain mechanisms and ways to, like, open these conversations, how things were, what kind of language was used, the fact that, let's talk about this. Let's talk about language for a minute, because this was one of the things that actually really surprised me. Carla's been, essentially been warning us of this for, 10 plus years, for as long as I've known her. She's been warning us of this, where essentially there is a group of people that want to, and have, in fact, made policies to remove certain words from our discourse within the birth community.
Yeah.
And one of those words is woman and women. Now, you had said to me earlier that while you were at the conference, that all the presentations that you attended were absolutely void of the word woman.
Yes.
Is that right?
You could notice that a lot of speakers kept slipping up and tripping over themselves, because they would, naturally go to the word woman, and they would have to, birth person, and they have to say birth person or just person, and then there was like multiple ways of saying it. I've heard that all the speakers were given gender neutral words to use. I am not for sure on that, if that was given to them by the MANA. I'm not exactly sure if they were actually handed, like, or emailed something saying you need to use these general neutral terms. But almost every single presentation I went to, all of the ones that I had just listed prior that I had attend, all of those speakers were doing that, and I could just sense, like, and it kind of just brings more attention to it when I'm in this class to learn about healing provider trauma, or PMAD. And it just really, it takes away from the learning. It's
Right.
like why is
Right.
this presenter is trying so hard to teach something, but then again trying just as hard to not offend anyone.
Well, there's also, I mean, what you're implying, and the reason that I suspect that this is true is because you're telling me your firsthand account of this, and this is what you took away, was that you felt like people were told that they couldn't use the word woman, and they were indeed correcting themselves if they slipped up and used the word. Okay, so there's one piece of, evidence, that your testimony. The other piece of evidence that I have is that, in fact, on their Facebook page, they've scrubbed it clean of anyone who says, mother baby unit, women-centered care, females give birth, anything that sort of nods to differentiating biological sex or representing the majority of females that identify with the word woman. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine trying to do my work without having to say the word woman once in a while. Like, it really does. It just makes you question, why in the heck is this going on? And Tasha says that any organization here, she says any organization, enforcing compelled speech should be run away from quickly. And I agree with her in the sense, like, why are we allowing an organization to tell us how to talk? I mean, isn't the basic premise of, and this is written into some of Manna's literature, that they're there to represent autonomous practice, and they in fact do, have respect for our own personal discourse and our own freedom of choice and our own ability to identify with words that represent us. So why is someone saying you can use this word and you can't use that word? I mean, just in general, that's kind of scary to me. Like, this is, that was my biggest issue, was what is up with this censorship? Anytime I'm a writer, anytime someone is telling me you can do this or you can't do this, or you can say this or you can't say that, then it's of interest to me, because I believe in this, freedom of speech. I believe that we should have equal representation. I feel that we should be able to use whatever language, as long as it's not intended to be hurtful, disrespectful, or divisive.
Exactly.
I mean, truly, and beyond that, like, how can we go back and erase, words that we have identified with as, as females and as women since the beginning of time? Like, all of this is sort of mind-boggling to me, a little bit weird and very, very sensitive. And so, that's something that I want to continue to discuss. There have been reports that people are saying now that they are looking to erase the word midwife altogether because it's not inclusive enough.
Yeah. That right there breaks my heart, because that is what we are. That is what we have always been. And I say that in my story. I'm like, well, when is, I'm waiting for them to start to take the wife out of midwife. Like, when are we gonna not, like, no longer be midwives anymore?
Absolutely. That was actually suggested on the Facebook page by someone who was in favor of that. Okay, it's since been scrubbed, I believe, that comment in particular, but it was suggested that we do away with the word midwife altogether. This should be of concern to everyone involved. I mean, essentially, this is suppression of free speech. This is pretty radical. This is pretty radical changes in policies that are being enforced, censorship and suppression of free speech, which are obviously two and the same thing. All right, there's so much here to uncover that it's like,
there is.
We can do this for a couple of hours, right?
There really, really is. And I love being a midwife. I am so passionate about being a midwife, and I will never change, who I am and what I feel like, I'm representing. And this has been, like you said, from the beginning of time, and I'm going to continue out those traditions from the beginning of time.
So thank you, Jadevyonna. I want to bring this up because Tracy Smith is bringing up a point here that I think I want to touch on. She's saying this is a disagrees in the sense that we should have, and what I feel like your comment is saying, Tracy, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that we should have guidelines around speech because, like she's saying here, I disagree, is not using the N-word suppression of free speech. Well, not using the N-word is just basic decent humanity. I mean, the N-word is a historically horrible word. It's a derogatory slur. It's a way to incite, so many things. I mean, it's just a negative, terrible thing. I myself don't use a word. I don't believe in using that word. I don't believe in what it represents. I've never heard anyone in my community use it to hurt anyone that way. It's something that culturally we just don't do. And so I don't really see how the word midwife and the N-word compare to each other or essentially are equal in any way. What does the word midwife mean? It means with woman, right?
Yeah.
And the word doula means, women's servant. And essentially those words are, positive and beautiful and nurturing and altruistic in nature. And I think that, it's really, I'm not really sure I understand, how we could compare the N-word to midwife. But if that's where we're headed, wow, I want to be a part of the discussion. And
yeah, well,
yeah.
It's funny that she brings up the N-word because I feel like the word that can be in comparison to that is a white supremacist. And
yeah,
that was what I was called, by a transgender speaker.
right.
There was a transgender speaker teaching the whiteness and racism class, and she is the one preaching this to me. So, this seems like the time to address. I'm sure a lot of people have been reading like the posts going around on social media, and someone had said that the reason I was taken off the mic was, and I'm going to say these terms just as an explanation to try to explain myself. I'm not trying to offend anyone. That because they said that I didn't say the woman of color, that I said colored. And just a personal background, what I was taught in school in my area, in my community, was that blacks was a very inappropriate word. And you had to address them as African Americans. So in my growing up, they were supposed to be addressed as African Americans. Blacks was very offensive for them. And I never knew that the word coloreds would offend, people of that race. I never knew that. And someone had said that I said that. I truly do not recall ever saying that when I was talking at the mic at Oprah Forum. I do distinctly remember saying woman of color. But, and then the only word that I was taught in school that was extremely offensive, not, inexcusable to use was the
Right.
word. And if that truly was why I was taken off the mic, I think that if I was coming from a hostile place on that mic, then yeah, take whatever I said wrong. But if I'm coming from a place of trying to help and, I was talking very respectfully, I would have appreciated if somebody addressed me after. Let me finish talking. Let me finish what I had to say, because I wasn't coming from a hostile place. I wasn't disrespectful. And kind of just someone approached me saying, hey, you use this term, like, in the future, just know that is an offensive term for.
And essentially, like what Tracy is saying, because she brought it up, the comparison between using the word midwife and the N-word. And she's also saying, when we know better, we do better. These are opportunities for growth. And I want to touch on that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to touch on that because the problem that I'm having is it doesn't seem like at all these were opportunities for growth.
No.
These were more opportunities to be identified as someone who is either with us or against us. and that the climate itself was hostile, agitated, and antagonistic. It seems to me that, well, it doesn't just seem to me, but I know, and I've witnessed, from your story and from what we've experienced on the Facebook page, that we are being censored and told that, we couldn't even have the discussion around these things. And so that's the issue, right? It's like we're not being allowed to have opportunities to discuss and grow. It's not a conducive learning environment when you're afraid to speak. Okay, this is the problem that I've always, our language, our use of words is only, it's only like 6% of the meaning behind what we say, right? So it's like 94% of what we're trying to convey in conversation is read through body language, tone, and inflection.
Yeah.
All right. That's just a fact. And so the words that we use, and whether you say colored women or women of color or something of that nature, it's really a semantics now, in the sense that, and this has been brought up time and time again, it's the intentionality behind those words. Is it more respectful to use words that, that community is, saying like, this is what we prefer? Absolutely. But we all have, a time and space in which we are learning. We have a learning curve. And essentially within that learning curve, we need to feel safe and welcome to grow and to change and to honor the fact that we're all there coming to the table to learn, to grow, and to change. And the way that it's being presented is though, that people are just presuming and assuming that you're there to be hateful, bigoted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you need to be corrected, and not just corrected, but told to sit down. This has happened to me in many forums where I'm told to sit down, shut up, stay in my lane. And essentially that I'm a racist, I'm a bigot, all these things that like get spewed at me, when all I'm saying, well, I mean, the conversation that I'm having has nothing to do with any of these negative, hateful words. It's just, it's crazy to me. So it infuses the conversation then with this negative energy and this propulsion to feel defensive and offensive. That's what I want to address. I want someone from MANA to talk to me, maybe Indra, maybe someone on the board to talk to me about their responsibility in creating a climate where people felt scared, nervous, disrespected, left crying. Okay, Jadevyonna, you're not the only person that I know that was removed from a forum, told to leave, and who left that conference in tears. So I think that we need to talk about what the hell is going on there. Someone needs to take responsibility for that, and really kind of reflect on whether or not we had these big, controversies and upsets, before all of these, language policing and all this other stuff started to come into play. So it's just kind of mind-boggling. But you're doing great. Giving us a bird's eye view of what went down. So let's go ahead and move forward to the open mic session.
Okay.
Because that's really where, the rubber hit the road. And that's really where I have one of my biggest issues of what happened. And so can you tell me a little bit about what the open forum was and what the climate was like in that session?
So the open forum, from my understanding, was where us midwives and student midwives could share our concerns or requests with the board. So on the stage was the president and vice president of MANA, and there was 2 mics down on the floor by the tables where all of us were sitting. People can freely go up and talk for 2 minutes about what they feel needs to be addressed, and just any requests they might have for MANA. And
so it's kind of like a city council meeting where everyone was allowed to speak if they alerted someone that, hey, I'm going up to the mic. Or did you guys kind of line up and go to the mic? Or
no, it was just kind of, you were sitting down at tables, and then you would just get up and go speak if you so wished.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So there was multiple, midwives and student midwives speaking, of multiple, ethnic backgrounds and races. And just talking about how, certain areas of their country or their communities need help in a certain area, and what led me to want to speak was because, there was a woman of color who got up to speak. She's a student midwife, and she was being very aggressive in her tone of voice towards the men aboard. And, she was sharing her struggles as a single mom. She, had mentioned that she was there on a free scholarship and had her tuition paid for, I believe by Manna is what she said. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that she needed more. She wanted her preceptor to pay her because she feels like she's giving her preceptor free labor, and
Mm-hmm.
which it's not. You're getting student credit, and and then yeah, then they want and then she was, demanding or requesting that the NARM exam be changed because they said that statistics show that women of color um, don't pass as frequently as white people do. And, they want to change that. They want a study guide. She was requesting a study guide to, that reflects directly the NARM exam, just a lot of big requests, and the way
Right.
she was presenting them was extremely
So
harsh and rude.
that's what I wanted to get to. And,
Yeah,
everyone's
the
entitled
tone.
to
Like, I don't mind you
their,
those things, but it was more of the
right.
aggression and the tone that she was having. And I was like, whoa. I was like, that's pretty, it was bold. It was pretty bold, I felt, and so, that kind of struck me as like, wow, like, how can you just stated to all of us that you were here for free by a Manna scholarship and have your school paid for, and then you're gonna aggressively, blatantly be so rude to them. Like, it was very shocking for me. Um and then another student decided to speak, and she identified as queer, so part of the LGBT community. And
Can I ask you a question? Did people, because I've been in these forums before where this has been requested of folks to, like when you get up to speak, you say, hi, my name's Courtney, I'm a doula from Portland, Oregon. You give a little intro. Was there a sense that people felt compelled to state their allyship or their sexual orientation or their queer identity?
The only thing
Okay.
that we were told to state was our names and whether
Okay.
we're a member of Manna.
Okay.
Does not have to state your identity in any sort of way.
Okay.
So,
cool. Thanks for clearing that up.
yeah. So this other student gets up and she outwardly identifies to queer to all of us, which is totally fine. I'm not offended by her. Like, everyone's, I don't get offended by people identifying however they choose fit. Doesn't mean I need to go up there and identify, and I shouldn't be, judged for doing so. So
Right.
she identifies, and then she just goes, starts attacking Manna extremely harshly too. Like, you guys aren't, Manna's not doing enough. I still see woman everywhere, woman here, woman this. And, I'm like, she's like, you guys are not doing enough and you need to do more. And I'm like, whoa. Like, and I felt they were doing a really good job, in my opinion, because I felt they were doing a really good job to include the LGBT community where it was making me feel uncomfortable. Because they were doing it so, it was a lot. It was a lot to take in because, they were representing this community so well, and the woman of color so well, that it kind of suppressed us other midwives who were not, who can't be a part of those communities. And then so I was just getting kind of really upset, and then I decided to speak. So I go up to the mic and I start off, I introduce myself. I'm Jadevyonna Lewis, and I'm not a member. And then I called out point blank. I was like, I can sense all the tension between the communities, the women of color, LGBTQ, and you know, the white community. And I asked the MANA board members, as a white student midwife, I am confused, and I'm sure a lot of other white midwives are feeling stuck. And I asked, what can I do to help these communities? Because this was all the reason that I was wanting to help was because when we would go over our statistics, you know, they kept emphasizing and shining the light that, you know, African American maternal and infant mortality rates are you know, are increasing. You know,
right.
They wanted them to,
right.
Which I felt so,
right.
And so
there are,
as a white midwife who is feeling extremely marginalized at this conference, what can I do to help? Like, what can I do to help? And
so your intention then was to understand. I mean, this is the sense that I'm getting, is that your intention was to understand what the problems are, and then to talk about solutions
exactly
to these problems,
because the whole
concrete solutions,
yeah.
And then to also understand what your role is within those solutions. And so I think that, I mean, I don't know, I perceive that as being a pretty positive position to be in, and saying, I'm listening, I've absorbed this information, now I'm reflecting on what it is that I can do. And so that's why you went up to the mic to state, I mean, what you told me earlier is you gave a little background about yourself.
That's the next part. And so the reason that I even was trying to, and you know, outwardly saying I'm confused and stuck and where can I help, is because almost every plenary, they kept hinting like at the you know, African American infant and Black mortality rates, and how this is an awful thing, and I completely agree. But no one's telling me what to do. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, you keep hinting to these things. So that was my request to MANA. Like, what can I do to help? Because you guys are clearly not giving us that information. Like, we're just being told that this needs to be fixed, and you know. And so I was like, where do I fit in this whole situation, and how can I help? And then I started to go in, because a lot of the previous students were talking about their personal struggles, and like how in their relationships with their preceptor, like the money part of it. So I go into that, and I was like, you know, I have worked with multiple preceptors that I am not comfortable with, and then I started to like go into like how I drive, you know, an hour almost 3 times a week in a crappy little Honda, and as soon as I started to try to go into that, I couldn't get any farther, and then I was just swarmed.
You were swarmed?
Yeah, people just started to came at me, and it was, you know, I can't remember exactly who all it was, but I'm pretty sure it was board members. And, you know, I'm already in a vulnerable state. It is very hard to get up and speak in front of a group of people.
I know. I understand that completely.
This is much, you know, and we were talking how this is much easier because I'm through a camera in a vehicle, you know, but when I'm up in front of everyone, I'm already shaky, you know. I got that little like, you know, glitching in my voice because I'm all like, whoo, you know, anxiety.
And the reason that we get nervous when we speak publicly is because our intention is to be respectful, inclusive, and honestly, we don't want to say the wrong thing. We're out there, we're not wanting to hurt anybody's feelings or incite divisiveness or be hurtful, bigoted, hateful. We're careful with our wording because we care. And so what I see in you is a young person, a young midwife who is, you know, you're constantly turning these wheels, thinking and being conscientious about what you're saying and you're doing. And you're not the only one that has, you know, if indeed you did say it in the inverse, colored women or colored midwives, you're not the first person to do that. You're not the first person to flub up and use a less desired, you know, phrase than another one. we're human beings. We're bound to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time speaking, but my intention behind my words are always the same.
Exactly.
I don't, you know, and so I think that as midwives and doulas and human beings, we have to assume that people are coming with the best intentions. We're doing the best we can with what we have and what we know, and that we're there to embrace other people's perspectives and stories and questions and all of that. And it sounds to me like, and you're going to get there to the very end, but that you went up to the mic to speak your perspective. Exactly. And things got a little weird.
Yeah, exactly. And I was trying to relate because, you know, I just wanted people to see, and I know all midwives were students once, you know. We all were there.
Always students.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
The thing. This is what I think. We are always a student until we've hit like elder midwife status. We are always a student.
You know, we're always learning.
Right.
There's always room for learning, and we all have struggles, regardless of our skin color, regardless of what we gender identify as. We all have struggles, and you know, so get back to the story.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I really felt bombarded. Like this whole wave of negative energy came at me when I'm already in a vulnerable state with a lot of adrenaline pumping. And then I hear people talking over me on the mic who, you know, the board members, the vice president, president started talking over the mic. And then saying, I forgot what they were saying. They said like they think this is one of those situations. Whatever that.
I think this is one of those situations.
Yeah, that is what my mother-in-law had said. They started talking over me. And then I feel hands be put on me, and
Hold on 1 second. I just want to like slow it down.
I know. I'm sorry. It gets all like.
No, it's okay. It's okay because I want to get every detail. Had you seen this happen in any other forum where anyone was that anyone in the board interrupted what they were saying and that they were removed from the mic? Could this happen in any other forum that you were in?
No.
So to your knowledge, nobody else around you who had spoke before you, and especially in this open mic forum, nobody else had been talked over or removed from the mic?
No, they were all applauded.
Okay. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep going.
So, you know, I hear, you know, them talking over the mic up on stage. And then I'm kind of like, what's going on? And then I turn and there's another student midwife or midwife talking on the other mic because there was two mics on the ground talking over me. And she might have been the one that said that this is one of those situations. I can't remember exactly. I do remember hearing that. And then I feel hands put on me and I like take a couple steps back because it was just like a rush of energy. And then someone's touching me and everyone's talking and this whole commotion. And then I look up and it's Indra. What's her last name?
Lucero, I believe.
Yeah, Indra Lucero. And I look up and I'm like, whoa, like what's going on? And, you know, and then she's like, you know, pushing me to, you know, get over to the, you know, edge of the conference room. And so I start walking because I'm like still confused. I am not in defense mode. I am not trying to resist. You know, and then I finally start walking over with her and I look at her and I'm like, what just happened? Like, why was I not able to continue speaking? And then she hands me this packet called, you know, on the Division of Access and Equity, and, you know, just hands it to me and starts opening it. Like, she's like, did you happen to attend the class earlier today? I'm like, the whiteness and racism class? I'm like, yes, I actually did attend that class. And she's like, good, well, that means, you know, you're starting to, you know, take the steps or something, you know. And then, so she's showing me this list, you know, and to basically talk about that. And I just started, like, talking to her. And at this point, this is when I started crying. I was not crying at the mic. Someone said that I was getting emotional at the mic. I was not. My voice was cracking because that's what happens when you're overwhelmed and talking in a crowd full of
Right.
people. But I did not start crying until I was just extremely overwhelmed and very confused about what was going on. And so I started.
Well, I think anybody would be confused and upset when you said that there were people touching you. I mean, that people that you felt swarmed, and you thought that these were board members or folks that were there to enforce whatever, regulate the forums.
Exactly.
And that they swarmed you, and that you felt hands on you. I mean, this is non-consensual touch, first of all. Okay.
Exactly. Nobody asked me to stop speaking. Nobody said, we need you to stop speaking now. Can you please step away from the mic? No once did someone ask me. They just swarmed, spoke over the mic to silence my voice, and put hands on me to start physically removing me away from the mic.
Were you, I mean, this is really hard for me to understand, Jadevyonna. Like, were you, I mean, the only instance in which I could see that being appropriate is if you were standing up there, you know, overtly being bigoted, mean, racist, even hostile, yelling, I don't know. I mean, those are the only types of scenarios that I could see that would be even considered to physically touch you and remove you from the mic. Like, and what your account is that you were up there, you were trying to be as careful as you could with your wording, you were calm.
I was extremely careful because I know how major of a topic it is. I know the intensity of these topics. I was trying to be extremely cautious. I am not hostile. I was not being disrespectful. I was simply offering my help and sharing that I am confused. I admittedly said I am confused and I am stuck. How can I help? Offering help, and then I started to transition into trying to relate to just as a student midwife, just trying to relate regardless of the color of my skin or my gender identity. I just wanted to relate and just show everyone that, like, we are all the same. We are all midwives. We all have struggles. We all have been there. Why can't we just be midwives? That was what I was trying to get to the point at the end of my conversation, which I was rudely, interrupted dramatically, but I was just trying to get to the point, like, what happened to just being midwives and just being the human race and being joined together as one in that way? And I couldn't even get those words out. I was automatically,
Now I want to say that, like, I just want to interject just a little bit and say these are really difficult topics, and I think anyone coming to the table and being publicly outspoken about any of them is really brave, because you do face a lot of scrutiny. We know that when we speak about our perceptions and our feelings and these difficult topics, that we're going to, we're subject to people calling us names and that kind of thing on both sides of the fence. And so it's those of us that, truly want to make connections and build bridges and have positive discourse. We're the ones that we're speaking up despite the fact that we're going to, take some shit for it, essentially, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that in and of itself shows that we're motivated to make these connections. And I'm, people may perceive that the way that you may be wording something isn't exactly spot on the way they would like you to speak it. And I understand that, I really do. But at the same time, again, I'm reading you as a whole human being. I'm reading your tone, your inflection, your body language, what you've stated your intention is, and I'm trusting that is truly your intention, that you're wanting to connect, and that what I hear you saying is that you wanted to find the common grounds and the ways that midwives and doulas and birth keepers do relate to each other, instead of focusing on all the ways that we don't relate to each other, and so on and so forth. So let's continue with the story about how you were spoken over on the mic, and then you felt swarmed with these folks coming around you. You were physically touched by more than one person. You eventually realized that Indra had her hand on you and was physically pushing you away to the corner of the room. You engaged in a conversation with her regarding the white supremacy or racist forum that you had attended. She handed you some literature. Am I getting this all right?
Yeah. Just
okay. And then what happened next?
I don't know if I was touched by multiple people, but I do know for a fact I was touched by Indra, because I looked up, well, as soon as someone touched me, my response was to look at who's touching me. It was her, and she's the one who escorted me over to the side of the conference room.
Okay.
So I'm given, she gives me the packet, and I'm just crying. I'm so upset at this point, and I'm just like, I don't understand. I'm just trying to help. I'm trying to relay, and Indra's just nodding her head. Doesn't really seem like she's interested in what I'm saying, just nodding her head, gives me my packet, and then she decided, and then Nicole White, who is a board member of MANA, comes.
Nicole, what was her name? Nicole White?
White. I think she's the director of events on the MANA board.
Okay.
And she comes up, and then Indra decides to leave because Indra, I guess, had to speak at another breakout session after the open forum. So Nicole White comes up, and, my mother-in-law is also with me at this point. So this isn't just a me against them. There was another person there who was listening to this as well and in this conversation.
Okay.
So, Nicole would barely let me talk. She wanted to talk over me, and so she's like, please, can I just talk? So I just finally shut my mouth, because it's apparently a problem for me to speak. And, she started going in like, my number one concern is the Black babies and moms dying in this country. And if midwives can't come together with these communities, then no one can. It won't work. And my mother-in-law, then, what happened to the human race? What happened to us just coming together as a human race? And she's like, that does not work, and I'm still emotionally upset and just super confused. And then I was just telling her again, I was like, I was just trying to figure out how to help. I was just trying to relate. And she puts her hand on me, and she's like, oh, honey, like, I understand that you have probably dealt with many, many struggles, but we can't have white tears shed here.
Sorry, she said,
we can't have white tears shed here. That to me was that was the most ridiculous thing I have ever been told by somebody.
We can't have white tears shed here.
Exactly. And I was like, and then I just got even more upset, because I was like, oh, wow, like, really? And then I'm like trying not to cry anymore, because I don't know, I didn't even know how to act. I didn't know who to be. I didn't know how to even be a normal person at this conference. And so I'm superly emotionally upset, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, seriously? Like,
so,
I'm not a
yeah. So seriously,
I'm
still, you told me this 2 days ago, and I'm still trying to figure this out. Like, Jadevyonna, if you had got up onto the mic and said, we can't have, in the inverse, let's just inverse the words, okay? I'm using this to demonstrate something here. The inverse of white is black, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to have said in a public way to anyone, hey, we can't have black tears shed here, what do you think the response would have been to a statement like that at the MANA conference or anywhere? It's inappropriate.
It is extremely inappropriate. I won't comment on what I think might happen, because I don't, I can't speak for others, but
essentially it's just, first of all, it's like, I don't even understand, like, why that would be appropriate in any context to say to anybody. Like, the whole thing just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why you were removed from the mic, why they were speaking over you, why you were swarmed and why Aunt Indra put her hands on you to physically remove you from the mic. I still don't understand what it is that you did that was so horrible that constituted people doing this to you. Here you are, a participant of the, participant of this conference. You paid to be there, whatever. You made it a point to show up and participate and learn and be a part of this community. And here you are being kind of like hauled off like a criminal, really, like kind of like you've breached some sort of like law or something, and they felt the need to dispose of you or remove you from speaking. It's pretty wild. It's wild and upsetting to even think that this was the climate of a conference centered around birth and midwives and doulas. It just doesn't even make sense to me. It just doesn't even make sense to me.
Oh, and it took me a while to even process all this. Like it,
right.
I felt like it just started like there was just like gears going in my head, like, what did I do? What did I say? Like, what happened? Like, why did this happen? Why is this happening? Like, to me, like, what, the rest of that day, like, I didn't even go to the other stuff after because I was so upset. And, it was a very traumatic event, like, emotionally traumatic for me. And, one of the midwives I spoke to after this happened, she did make a point that now we know what it feels like to be marginalized for our race.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, it really does suck. It gives me a big perspective now on, and, I can truly understand and relate to what, other communities go through. But doing this is wrong. You can't fix something by switching the gears and doing it to another group, because
that's kind of what I was going to get at. And I just have to say, like, I think that's kind of remarkable that you have this positive takeaway from being touched without consent and silenced when you're trying to speak your perspective. That you're saying, I feel like I can identify now with what it really feels like to have my voice suppressed and this kind of thing. And I think that's an interesting takeaway. I don't think everyone would, essentially, relate to that way, but I relate to it in that way. But I also want to say that why would we want to perpetuate the same behaviors of censorship, marginalization, and divisiveness to try to solve a problem that stems from those very things? It doesn't really make sense. Essentially, you can't get peace by fighting. You can't use the same mechanisms of oppression and censorship to remedy censorship and oppression. It doesn't really make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't, and all it did was cause more division.
Right.
That entire conference was divided, and
right.
And their word was collaborate.
Right. That's exactly what I brought up this morning with Indra, and I'm trying to get her to address this. And she's been responding to my question. Well, she's been responding to the threads, but not responding to my direct questions thus far. I'll have to go back and take a look today because we've been on here for now, maybe an hour or so, or half hour to 45 minutes. And I haven't seen exactly what she's written now, but it's like, I want to address why, we're cut down the middle and why this has happened. And like, if the intention is to truly unite the community, build bridges, have communication, the enforcement of these policies, this word policing, and on this censorship has essentially done the exact opposite, which is divided our community right down the middle. And now, unfortunately, there's all this infighting and, aggressive language being used and disrespectful discourse and like just terrible things that are going on in our forums. So it's done the exact opposite. And I don't understand it. It like breaks my heart too. It absolutely breaks my heart that this is happening. It breaks my heart that our energy is being put towards this language issue and all this stuff when we have mothers and babies and families to serve, and that the focus should be on that and not like what words we're using.
And I wanted to make something very clear to everyone that I am a big believer in individualized care. So I will support these communities when they walk into my office to hire me as their midwife. I will gladly respect whatever they want to be called, whatever pronoun they choose. I will gladly respect whatever cultural techniques they would like to use during their birth or any type of ceremonies, because that is individualized care. And
individualized care,
and I will never judge or discriminate against any of my clients. And I will work coincide with these communities, but I am not going to be labeled as a white supremacist, and I am not going to be silenced on my point of view, as I will not label them, in a disrespectful manner, and I will never silence their point of views.
I think that's really admirable, and I think, I think it's unfortunate, honestly, that we even have to state that up front, because again, in this way, it's like we're presumed as though we would be operating otherwise as bigoted, hateful, non-inclusive midwives and doulas, without this interception into our communities, without this pressured, compelled speak, without this indoctrination, without being told how to speak, that we somehow operate divisively and hatefully anyway. It just doesn't make any sense, in the sense that, like, as midwives and doulas, we provide individualized care, and we operate under the notion of autonomous practice. That's stated in MANA's literature already. Autonomous practice, that we believe that each of us, has the autonomy to practice and contribute to our communities the best way we know how, with the best intentions, and that face-to-face. I've done this work for, I've been a doula for 9 years. I've been a social worker for 20 years. The way that I approach each individual is in a compassionate, empathetic way. I'm there to care for my clients. I'm there to be empathetic and nurturing. My position is to be someone who they trust and feel safe with.
Exactly.
And so it's like presuming that I would be otherwise is just kind of strange to me. It's like, judge people on their behavior. Look at what we're actually doing on the ground and how we operate as a collective group. This is how we come to our work, with this open mind and open heart, and respecting people of all of however they identify, and respecting all people as human beings and as families that are bringing a child into the world. That's where we're coming from.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man alive. And I said this to you in private, but I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm really sorry that happened to you. I think that you're really brave, beautiful, and articulate. And I see a young woman, young midwife, who is, wanting and aspiring to engage in this discourse in as respectful way as she possibly can.
Yeah.
And, I commend you for wanting to come on air too, because this is hard to do. This is really hard to do.
This is very hard to do. And, and I kind of been like put in the middle of this whole divide. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of way over my head. But, I do feel like it needs to be said. I don't want to be pushed to the side and brushed under the rug. I'm not going to stand for that. And, everyone's voice needs to be heard, and not just including mine. And there was multiple stories I've heard from the MANA conference of like dishonor and,
Can I ask? Yeah, I want to ask you about that. I want to go back to the elder issue, because that's the one that's just like really, it's just really, I woke up this morning in tears, honestly. I woke up this morning in tears, feeling that heaviness in my heart. You had talked to me in private about some of the comments that were being made about elder midwives. And can you touch on that again? There was a specific phrase that was used that keeps kind of going over in my head that I'd like you to speak about. You were saying that there was some discussion about how, tell me if I got this wrong, because I wasn't there, but you're saying that there was discussion that you witnessed and people were saying, like, basically things are going to change, get used to it, everything has an expiration date, and it was like this idea that basically the elder midwives needed to kind of sit down and shut up and just deal with the fact that we were that these changes need to be made in our language. And can you speak to that a little bit? Because I'm trying to understand what was said, what you heard, and just kind of like the overall feeling about traditional midwifery.
I will tell you what I heard. I personally was not there for these occasions, so I'm going to point out blankly say that I was not present. So, I really hope that the midwives who were reach out and speak up about their own perspectives of this, because I was just told by them personally or by others. So I just want to put that out there that, don't hold any of this against me. So I found out that at the awards ceremony at the MANA conference, I had heard that they asked all student midwives to stand up, and then asked all the, basically asking the white straight midwives to sit down, and then honored all the rest. And then I heard that they asked all the preceptor midwives to stand up, and then asked which preceptors are willing to financially fund and support these communities. And if they didn't agree, then they needed to sit down, and they told all of the other, students, do not go to these preceptors, And
wait, hold on a second. I'm still trying to digest this. So, and I want somebody who attended the award ceremony to talk to me. I reached out to some folks, and people are saying, I had
love to hear more on this, because when you're having people stand up and then telling them to sit down based off of their color of their skin or how they identify, that's dishonoring. It's really disgusting. I'm sorry, it's disgusting. I don't see how anyone can feel comfortable doing that. Like, I don't see how you can feel comfortable doing that to somebody.
Well, it's, traditionally, and I'm just speaking for myself personally in the climates that I've worked within, my generation, our gender identity or our sexuality is something that is private to us, that like a lot of people feel like it's just not appropriate for someone to ask that of us, and to feel pressured to out ourselves in that way. It just doesn't really make sense to me. What does this have to do with the practice of midwifery at all, as how I identify, or whether or not I feel I'm an ally or not? Or, I mean, what you're saying is that they created a situation, and this is what we think happened, because neither of us were actually at the awards ceremony. So I love someone who was there to talk to me about this. They can come on air and tell me what, exactly happened from their perspective. But what you're saying is that they asked people to identify a certain way based on their skin color or their sexual orientation, to stand up and sit down, so that there could be some visual representation of who people were. Like, I just don't understand what the point of that was.
I don't understand at all. I don't understand any of that, and I don't understand how someone can do that. That's why I would love someone to talk to, like, speak up about it, because I'm really interested about what they have to say. Their feelings of being in that, or maybe they were one of the people who were forced to sit down or told to sit down, And, I'm just thinking, I was like, I would have not sat down, everyone needs to be honored, every student needs to be honored, every preceptor needs to be honored. It takes a lot of courage to do this work and to train people in this work and to pass on our traditions and our skills. And everyone needs to be honored for the work that we all do. to help, you know.
Yeah, I don't understand what that was for, what that was about. I really do want to understand more. Hopefully Indra would be willing to do an interview with me, because, you know, she's you know, she has been responsive. We haven't had any responses from actually I haven't had any responses from the inquiries I've had to the MANA board, but you have.
But I have.
Right,
so
you have gotten a response.
I'm interested to see where that goes, because my plan was to get my story, write my story, and send it directly to the president and vice president. And now I haven't even reached out to them yet, and they found and reached out to me.
Good.
So I think that shows a lot, and I'm also I'm just very nervous. You know, I'm really nervous about that conversation, but I'm also very very just curious about their side of what happened, and you know, I will be sharing that with everyone this weekend after I speak with them. You know, as long as babies don't, you know, because the babies decide to come Earthside when that, you know, discussion is scheduled, it might be postponed, but I definitely want that part of my story, because I think it's very important that they reached out, and I want to make that known.
Yeah. I mean, we're here to have discussion. We're here to
do, and we're
you know, get to the bottom of it. Sorry, honey, keep talking over you.
You're okay. Yeah, I'm just interested to see what they have to say.
Yeah.
So
I too would like to hear directly from a board member or Indra herself, addressing these specific issues of the censorship on the Facebook page, which I was a part of. Explain to me why the comments were removed and the reviews were removed. I'd like to know what the point of the you know, the virtue signaling or the identifiers on the badge were, and what the point was of this, like, sit down, stand up thing. You had said that in that you heard in the award ceremony that they said they asked people if folks would support certain communities financially, and if they didn't stand up for that, then someone said, then don't go to the people that are sitting down.
Yeah, so the women of color and LGBT community, I heard they were told, don't go to those preceptors. You need to go to you know, it drives me insane. And then the thing that I heard about the elders was basically that the elders were told, you know, everything has an expiration date. So basically it's your time to expire, which is a horrible word to use on
I know
on an elderly woman.
I just
that is so wrong to me. That is so disrespectful that they were told it's time for them to, you know, everything has an expiration date. So basically they need to retire, be done, and move out of the way, and let, you know, this whole organization be dismantled and built from the ground up with these new.
Absolutely. That's ageism. I mean, they're using tactics that are essentially, I mean, censorship, suppression of speech, ageism, all these, you know, it's like, if the focus is to unite people, I don't understand. It's doing the exact opposite. I mean, using tactics that are like hurtful, bigoted, racist, ageist, to differentiate groups and to divide us, to get us fighting. I mean, that's what's going on.
Well,
this isn't working, is what I'm saying. It's not working.
You know, in the packet they gave me, they said, you know, they list all their steps on how they're gonna, you know, make this, and, you know, equal. The word is equity, but it says you have to dismantle the organization, and that is what they're doing. You know, they are point blank dividing everyone, so we fight, so they can just come on in and build this, you know, build it however they want, and
divide and distract, so that whatever agenda or, you know, they see fit. And it's like, and I use the word they because it's a general term, but I'm trying to understand. And I did ask Indra this directly, you know, because I do want to know what makes her the best qualified person to insert these policies and to advise MANA on these policies, besides the fact that she, you know, from what I know about her, and it could be wrong, maybe she's a practicing, I don't believe she's a practicing midwife or doula.
I don't believe. I heard that she's a lawyer.
Yeah, right. She has a law degree, and that she is an activist. And there's a lot of questions, honestly, about her connections to certain funders and whatnot. And I don't want to get into that. That's a whole another topic of discussion. And we've been going round and round and round. And Mary Lou Singleton has had, provided a lot of information regarding her connections to trans activists and quite frankly, just some special interests and private interest groups that are of question. And I have asked her that directly, like, what makes you the best qualified person to be advising the board of MANA on language and birth policy? There are other folks in the community that have been embedded in and deeply committed to the sanctity of birth and women's rights and womb sovereignty, that have been in the community a very, very long time, that have degrees and focuses in women's studies and women's issues and birth policy and birth issues. Someone who comes to mind is Hermine Hayes Klein. I mean, she's been, very visible in voicing, upholding, women's issues within the birth community for a really, really long time. And so there are other people that have, already share, in our community and have been active in our community other than Indra. And I've asked her, it's like, what makes you the best qualified person to be doing these things? And she really hasn't spoken to that. And she hasn't spoken to the censorship issue. And she has not spoken to her reasons for putting her hands on you.
Yeah.
She
says she's open for discussion, but then she blatantly ignores what we're asking.
Right.
I'm very interested to know. I'm very interested to know her point of view of what happened at that open forum and what made her feel that she had the right to do, put her hands on me. But it's gonna be up to her if she wants to tell.
Right. Right. And Randy's asking very sensitively. She says, does Indra identify as a she? Are we using her preferred pronoun? We should.
I have no idea.
I don't know either. And she's never, or when I've addressed Indra directly online, I've, made it a point to use gender neutral language because I am really trying. The reason that I default to using the word she is because I happen to know that she, or that Indra has given birth to children, and it's just like this default setting in my brain. So truly my intention is to not be disrespectful in any way towards Indra and her preferred, the preferred pronouns of Indra, but I just don't know the answer to that. And so my apologies. That's just kind of how I naturally speak and flow. It's not meant to be disrespectful to anyone. If Indra comes to me and lets me know what she just, prefers, then I'll honor that for sure. So I just wanted to address that. Wow, we've covered a lot of stuff.
We have.
We've covered so much, and really what we can do now is just see what comes of the conversations that you're having with the board members. We'll see if we can come to some resolutions and discussions with Indra specifically, because I think that it can't, like you said, get swept under the rug, that we need to address these issues in our community. And we want answers. We want to know why these things are happening. We want to know to whose benefit, to what benefit is of this, that we're now splintered, divided, infighting, calling each other's names, disrespecting our elders. I mean, what good is going to come of all of this? That's what I'm curious to know as well.
Exactly.
All right, dear. So was there anything else that we didn't cover that you maybe want to speak to? I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of have, the last.
No, I feel like I was able to share my story and my feelings about what happened, and that's all I wanted to do at that open forum. So I'm really glad that I'm able to do that now. And I just really wanted to, everyone's curious and they wanted to know. So I really wanted everyone to really get a picture of what exactly happened. And they can decide from there, who they, you know, whether they're gonna, you know, continue to support Mana or what, you know, give them some ideas of what they're going to be doing next, you know.
Well, I'll speak to that a bit. There's already discussion of, you know, forming alternative groups that represent, you know, that keep intact our traditional language and traditional midwifery practices and this and therefore, I mean, just looking at this from a free speech angle and as a writer, I get really prickly when people tell me I can't use certain words. It's really my right to express myself how I choose. People don't have to like it. I mean, we're always going to have, you know, somewhat, you're not going to be able to please everybody all the time, no matter what you're saying, right?
Everybody, we can.
And there's varying degrees of what it means to be respectful and all of that. But it's essentially, no matter anytime you speak or write something, somebody may have a feeling about it. Again, it goes back to our intentions. And I just have a huge problem with folks telling me what I can say and when I can say it. And I have a huge problem with policies being enforced that don't represent, you know, a good portion or even the majority of portion of folks that are in that community. I mean, midwives and doulas identify with the word woman.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that a lot of us use that in good faith.
Another thing that I think should just point out is that clients choose us. We don't choose our clients. So, you know, just that's something to think about.
Right. Absolutely. There's a midwife and doula for everyone, and we're not all the same. We're not always going to agree. We're going to have, you know, different perspectives from how we grew up, where we, you know, how we were raised, you know, the experiences that we've had. And we're here to honor those and to respect those. And we do that by truly being inclusive of everyone's voice, you know, how everyone chooses to identify. I mean, I am so proud of being a woman. I love the word woman. I truly do. I love the word woman. I use it all the time. It's not like, and so I want to have, you know, my representation. I want to be represented in our community and not feel like I can't use the word that I myself identify with and love dearly and hold sacred. It's strange to me that I'm being told that I can't. And I mean, that's the bottom line. So, thank you so much, love. It's been really interesting, all of this, and I really appreciate you coming on. You're my first guest ever on the Witch and Bitch.
Yeah. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. I'm really glad that people, you know, started to speak about what happened to me, and it's really nice to share it and have, you know, a lot of support. And, you know, because I thought like I was just going to be silenced and I'd send my letter to Mana and it would just be deleted. So it's really nice that I have this support system and that I was able to not be silenced and speak my piece. And that's all I ever wanted. So thank you for that.
Yeah, let me just read to you some of the comments. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story. I would be tempted to go hide. And Courtney, thank you so much for speaking up for women. And, you know, and yeah, it's like, I want to thank everybody who's come to the table and have come onto the threads and have voiced their opinion, you know, whether we agree or disagree. It's important that we come together and we keep talking and we keep the discussion going and we feel safe, that we truly feel safe to discuss these things. Despite the climate that seemed to be purposely created to make us feel unsafe, and cut down the middle and delineated and differentiated from each other, despite all of that, we're still coming to the table and discussing openly. And so I just want to give a shout out to everybody that's doing that in good faith. And I appreciate all of you for viewing today. There were a lot of you taking in this Facebook Live, and then of course it'll be in my archives so folks can go back and watch the show. All right, Jadevyonna, I wish you many blessings on this next birth, and
thank you.
Let's talk real soon. Let's touch base, because like I said when we met the other day, this is the beginning of a beautiful relationship, and I suspect we're going to be friends forever from this point on. So I appreciate that part of it. It's funny how we came together, but I appreciate that we did. So it's been a pleasure talking to you, love. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me on here. It's been great. Thank you.
You're welcome, dear. All right, go have a good birth.
I will.
And we'll talk soon. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.